All right, everybody, welcome back into the Auburn Live show. Look at us all. Fall camp starting, and here we are.
It's time.
Man.
Let me get out of big cat mode just for a second so we can talk about fall camp. I mean, is there a better time of year if you're an Auburn fan?
Then what, fall camp?
Big cat transition into fall camp, right?
Yeah, it helps when you land some people. Then
It does.
Yeah, I would have said 2 years ago, Cole, probably there couldn't have been a worse time of the year than you were transitioning.
Yeah. Big shell of its former self. And
yeah,
the team's going to be bad. Yeah. You're like, can we just move on?
Right. You know what I mean? But in the vein of your argument, Cole, absolutely huge buzz coming off this weekend. Now we get to be excited and talk about what the product could look like in fall camp. And I think there's a lot that this team is capable of this year. And I'm interested to see the direction that you guys think this is going to go, or the upward trajectory you think it could take.
Well, let's jump into all of that. This is a fall camp preview type show. We're just going to kind of chat and toss out some thoughts about what we think might happen, what we're curious about, all that good stuff. Real quick before we get started, shout out Session Cocktail in downtown Auburn, sponsor of all the Auburn Live football and basketball shows. Go check them out. Heart of downtown, right there on Magnolia Avenue. Happy hour drinks 4 to 6, I think. They've started doing trivia on Tuesdays, and I think bingo on Mondays or Wednesdays. I can't even remember. I got to get the schedule right. But anyway, they kind of do something every night of the week. So if you want to pop down there, they do Whiskey Wednesdays. So make sure you go check them out. Good Friends Bars, Session Cocktail in downtown Auburn. We'll see if we can get through the show without Auburn getting another commitment. How about that?
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, but the way this week's going, you never know.
Might be cutting it close.
Yeah. Well, if we do, just mute it and tweet some stuff out. Cool. All right, fall camp, getting rolling. Hugh Freeze. I was on Jocks earlier, and they asked me about Hugh Freeze being confident, being comfortable, like seeming to exude, a confidence that they were kind of like, where's that coming from? And I said, well, the roster, he certainly thinks the roster's better, but so much of what is coming from him seems to be like just a combination of everything. I think he feels better about the coaching staff. I think he feels better just being a head coach in the program a year plus later and understanding the recruiting infrastructure. I think he understands the talent in the league, sort of where they're at better. He certainly feels like they have better players. So I think it's just a combination of stuff that's making him comfortable. I don't know that it's one specific thing, but what would your answer to that be if somebody said, well, Hugh looks confident, he looks comfortable, he looks like he's a guy that's got a team that could be dangerous or something along those lines? What would you attribute that to?
I think so much of that is the unassuredness in year one, because you're coming from another place in Liberty where you're not necessarily as familiar with the roster as you are in year two, right? And knowing exactly what your strong suit's going to be, how to build the team, how bought in are players into the culture, into the offensive philosophy or defensive philosophy that you're trying to put into place. Fast forward a year, you've been through some adversity. You've probably moved on from players who weren't bought in. You've added more players through recruiting, through the high school ranks, as well as the transfer portal. And so this is much more in line with the kind of team that Hugh Freeze wants to coach. And I think having coaches on staff, I mean, you talk about bringing in Derek Nix. You talk about promoting Ken Austin, guys that he is very familiar with, that he's had success with in the past. This is going to be an offensive system that he is very familiar with. It's that RPO, vertical shot offense, that's going to feature a power running game. Those all play into his strengths. Now you add a defensive coordinator in DJ Durkin, co-defensive coordinator in Charles Kelly, high energy guys that preach the kind of intensity on the defensive side of the ball that he wants to see, that mirrors what he's going to try to assimilate on the offensive side of the ball. And I think you find yourself in a situation where, just because of the experience of going through a year, because of the pieces, the familiarity, the culture that you've built, that breeds that confidence. And you also kind of have seen them against the Georgias and the Alabamas, and you know what the heart of this roster, that they've been in those kind of battles and how they're going to respond. So just a huge part of knowing what you have always makes you comfortable. And then I think obviously he's much more comfortable as a play caller, and he's going to be featured as that this year. I know Derek Nix is going to get first crack, right? Ken Austin's also going to be involved, but let's not kid ourselves here. Hugh Freeze is going to get back to what Hugh Freeze does, which is calling plays somewhat, and I think that's in Auburn's best benefit.
Yeah, I think it's two main things for me, at least. The fact that he's calling plays now, or has a hand in it, or in control of it, or whatever you want to call it. I think it's going to be his offense at the end of the day, and that's what matters the most. That's what makes him feel the best about it. And then, because it's his offense, he's got more confidence in his passing game, and I can tell. I can see it in his body language. I can see it in his quotes. He feels better about being able to throw the football and actually making a big play out of it, making a move the chains with the passing game, instead of, all right, we got to stay ahead of the chains, and then hopefully we don't get a passing situation anytime soon. Well, that's not how football works. You're going to. And when they got in those situations a year ago, it was ugly. It was hard. So I don't think that's the case anymore. I think he's looking at it going, if we need to get in a situation where we have to throw the ball, I think we're going to be at least better. You got youth, but you also have some veterans in Robert Lewis and Keandre Lambert-Smith. And then I think he's got some confidence about Peyton Thorne. I really do. I think he feels better about him going into this season with him in charge of the plays of the offense.
Man, what a difference 7 months make. I was sitting in the media room below Nissan Stadium after the Music City Bowl, and that was depressing. And Hugh Freeze got up there and said, he said a lot of things like, listen, you don't have to tell me how bad that was. I know, he was like that. And he was like, but about the quarterbacks, he was like, open. This thing's wide open going into the spring. And I heard plenty of things behind the scenes that after that game, it was a little bit of a panic, a little bit of a crap. Do I have the right guy? And that's why you saw Auburn toy with some portal quarterbacks. And now he's out here going, I have complete and utter confidence in Peyton Thorne. I'm a total believer in Peyton Thorne. Now, obviously, I think Hugh's trying to build him up. But listen, last fall, Hugh didn't even say those things. He was hard on Peyton in the media last year. I thought he was very tough. Like he was not eager, I didn't think, to heap praise on Peyton last year in the fall. Like he did, but he was very much like, still a lot of work to go. We'll see. I mean, I thought he was kind of tough on Peyton. When considering what was going on around him, Peyton deserved more credit. He was far from perfect. We know that, but people understood what was going on around him. They would have backed off the criticisms of him a little bit, but Hugh was still pretty tough on him. So to hear Hugh come out and talk about him in the glowing way he has is not surprising, but it's encouraging if you're going to take Hugh's word for it. I mean, if you're going to believe what he's saying and say he's not just hyping it up, it's highly encouraging. I think a lot goes into that. There's a million reasons to think Peyton Thorne and the offense will be better. Playbook, offensive coordinator, and Hugh being on the same page, terminology the same. Peyton's going through another year of the system, better receivers. Like, literally, there's every single thing that you could maybe point to of what could make a quarterback better, you could probably apply to this offense from last year to this year. Now it'll be up to Peyton to go do that. So let's just start with the offense in general, I guess, since we're talking about it. What are you most excited about? What is something that you're like, man, I feel super good about this. I think we're going to get into fall camp and only continue to hear great things, or maybe something you're optimistic about. Like, I think there's potential here, but I want to keep hearing good things about what kind of gets you going about this offense, position, player, whatever.
Sure. I think probably on offense, what I'm confident in is the running game. obviously the way they were able to run into loaded boxes last year. I mean, you were talking about 8-man boxes at times, and they were still able to successfully run the football. So to build off of that, you don't lose anybody that was, obviously Brian Battie, and I think all of our thoughts and prayers are still with him on his recovery. But the 3 backs that you thought were probably going to get the lion's share of the carries are all there. And Jeremiah Cobb, Jarquez Hunter, and then Damari Alston. So you got your 3-headed monster there that you can lean into. And then what I'm probably optimistic about is, what are those wide receivers this year going to do in one-on-ones? Because if they choose to load the box in a similar fashion early in fall, the way they did last year, can Cam Coleman make them pay on the outside? Can Robert Lewis make them play in the slot? What is Rivaldo Fairweather when he's not having to be featured as an outside weapon, when he gets to be that mismatch on the interior versus a linebacker or a safety, him being able to use his body in those one-on-one matchups. So I'm really eager to see that, because I think that has an opportunity to lift this offense from where it was last year and move it forward to a place where we feel comfortable about predicting 8 wins, in the regular season. Because if it can get to that point, then that is pushing it forward. That's continuing to build momentum. And I think that's putting Auburn in a position that it needs to be. Realistically, this is the most fun time for me if you're an Auburn fan, the build, right? Sustaining success is the tough part, but the build is the part that you can fall in love with as an Auburn fan, because you can see it progressively getting better year over year.
Yeah, it's the offensive line for me. And I'm an offensive line guy. I pretty much default to that in the first place anyway. But I feel good about this offensive line. And it's not even the starters. The starters I feel good about, but I like the 2 deep. I think there's enough to have a 2 deep and even a couple more trickle in behind that 2 deep. And masterclass job of getting that together in such a quick time. Obviously, we've talked about that ad nauseum. But I think that they've got options. I don't think you have to roll with Percy Lewis every single play at left tackle. You can, but if Tyler Johnson's pushing him, rotate him. That's the new – a while back, when that first started, it was criticized a lot. Offensive line, you don't rotate. You want to jail your 5 guys, whatever. We're in a new day, guys. That's not how it goes anymore. You got to have rotation. You got to have bodies. You got to have fresh legs. You think about it. Defensive line's rotating 8 to 10 guys. You stick with 5 guys in offensive line. You need more. And Auburn didn't have that the last couple seasons, in my opinion. I think they got it now. Plus, probably the least talked about player on Auburn's football team is Dylan Wade. Guys, Dylan Wade is an NFL guy. I truly believe that from watching him. And he's moving down to guard. That's just going to make this offensive line as a unit so much stronger when you do that. When he catches on, and I think he will in fall camp, and learns his new position. You got Percy Lewis, you got Tyler Johnson that can be there at the left tackle. You got Xavier Tutal Miller, who I've always been a big fan of, and Jeremiah Wright. He could really make strides this season.
Yeah,
that starting from there and going outward, when you're looking at how good this offense can be, you're confident. I don't see many people that would go, they're not very good there. You look at it and go, yeah, that's a great origin of the offense right there.
Sure. And you didn't even mention Connor Liu, who might potentially have the highest ceiling of any player on the offensive line this year. Possible All-American in the future, potential NFL draft pick, right?
I think he's going to be. I was actually having this discussion with somebody the other day about Connor Liu, and I'm just thinking back of sort of my lifetime,
mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking of center prospects. Obviously, Reese Dismukes comes to mind, and Ryan Pugh was really good. But man, for a while, even in the Tuberville days, you had undersized centers just sort of doing the job. You didn't have dominant centers. You had guys that had walk-ons playing center that were overachieving in some really good teams under Tuberville. And then, I wasn't around in the 80s, but you start getting too far back and those lines got a lot smaller. So it's really hard to compare, generations. But boy, Connor Lew's got a chance to be the best Auburn center I've ever seen. Reese Dismuke was fantastic. Pugh was fantastic too, but Connor, I'd have to go back and look up heights. Connor might be, I think Connor's bigger than both those guys a little bit, certainly bigger than Ryan Pugh. Ryan Pugh was probably 6'2"-ish. I don't know. I think Connor Lew's got a chance to be the best center that I've seen at Auburn.
He very well could. I mean, Reese Dismuke is one that comes up in recent memory. Joe Cope, Ryan Pugh, those guys like you mentioned. Auburn hadn't had, with center, it's like it's kind of like maybe a kicker or something that you don't really talk about them. You don't want to hear much about them. Honestly, they need to be quiet. If they're quiet, they're doing their job. If you're talking about them, they've messed something up. And I think Connor Lew is not going to be talked about much for that reason. It's almost why I didn't mention him. He almost slipped my mind because it's like, he'll be fine. I'm not worried about him.
I hear you on that, Cole. Yeah, it's hard with Reese because he started all 4 years at center, right? With Ryan Pugh, it's a little bit different because remember those first 2 years under Tuberville, he started at tackle, which was the strangest thing you've ever seen, to see a 6'2" offensive tackle out there battling defensive ends in the SEC. But that speaks to his natural athleticism and his toughness, and probably being an underrated athlete. Connor Lew has an opportunity, I think, because of his physical ceiling, to go beyond what Reese was capable of. And Reese was a nasty, just tough-minded guy that you would go to battle with any day of the week, especially in those SEC offensive line versus defensive line battles that you're going to have. I just think this young man has the opportunity to be that much better, and that's saying a lot because I think a lot of Reese Dismukes.
When we're talking about the receiver position, which I think take your pick on, I think where most people fall on offense, whether it's Peyton Thorne or receivers in terms of some type of concern or some type of hesitancy, like, okay, if Peyton Thorne steps or if the receivers, those probably go hand in hand. But when we're talking about receiver, what's a bigger, question mark to you, or what do you think is more important? Cam, I think we know what Cam already is and what he can be. I think we know what Keandre Lambert-Smith can be because he's got something experience behind him. Robert Lewis is a guy that's played a bunch of football, but it's not on the SEC level. And then you've got Malcolm Simmons and Bryce Cain trying to figure out, can they get in the rotation? Sam Jackson's trying to figure out what's his role, what's he going to do. So do you have a bigger question mark? Or are you more studying Cam Coleman's quick ascent, like how good can Cam Coleman be and how quickly can he get there? Or is it more important for Auburn for a Robert Lewis or a Bryce Cain or a Sam Jackson or this third receiver to rise up? In other words, if I told you Cam Coleman's going to shoot up, he's just going to explode this fall, and you're going to have Cam and Keandre, but I cannot guarantee you anything on a third guy. I don't know what the third receiver is going to look like. Or Cam's going to be good. Maybe he's going to give him a little bit of patience. He'll get there. But this third receiver's got to develop. You know what I mean? Like, where do your eyes shift? Are you just totally focused on Cam Coleman and how good he can be and how quickly? Or do your eyes kind of go, okay, I think Cam's going to be fine. Who's the third receiver? Like, who are we relying on in the slot?
I think we know who we're relying on in the slot. I think it is Robert Lewis. My understanding of the situation is he was extremely reliable, has had a fantastic summer. He's a veteran leader in that room in a way that we didn't necessarily have last year. You combine that with the work ethic of a Keandre Lambert-Smith and somebody who's been productive at the Power 5 level, and it takes the pressure off, to me, of what Cam Coleman has to be. Now, I think he's going to be fantastic, but I do think it's going to be a little bit of a shock to him, probably in the Cal game when he matches up against athletes that he hasn't necessarily competed against in a live game situation beyond the 8A game. So that will be different for him, and how he continues to develop by the time you get to mid-year really kind of tell you what the ceiling on this offense is going to be, because to me, he is that vertical weapon down the field that you have to have for this offense to take the next step. I firmly believe that they'll be able to get the ball to Robert Lewis. They'll be able to get the ball to Keandre Lambert-Smith. You know what you have at Rivaldo Fairweather at tight end. So I feel good there. But how Cam continues to progress, can he be one of those freshman wide receivers like a Laquan Treadwell that has kind of that outstanding year where you go for over 700 yards receiving as a freshman? That's what you don't know just yet, because freshmen are different. Sometimes they're ready to play. Sometimes the stage is a little too big. If you take what he did in the A-Day game, you would think he's going to be just fine. But again, we've seen guys flash in A-Day and then you never see them again. So don't get, they'll let that be the whole thing that you base this argument on. But I think it's probably what happens with Cam. And then obviously for me, it's probably even the fourth wide receiver, right, Cole? Like, does Camden Brown make a move? What do you get out of Sam Jackson? Does Perry Thompson, can he kind of continue to evolve? Perry is a phenomenal athlete, fantastic build and frame, but playing at the college level is different. And he's going to be playing against a different caliber of athlete on the outside. So how quickly does he learn the nuances of playing receiver, stemming routes, doing speed circles, things where he's learning the finer points of playing wide receiver while also digesting a college offense? That's a lot. That's a lot to take in.
Like that dude, Caleb Burton's forgotten.
Yeah, he is, right?
I know.
And he shouldn't.
That's his fault.
Well.
But part of it's talent and an influx of talent too.
Yeah, that's a fair statement, Justin.
I don't know where he's at. I don't know what the coaches think about him right now. He's another guy I was thinking about the other day.
Yeah, I don't know.
What are the thoughts on that dude right now?
That's pretty good about the receiver room right now, is because there's guys that you carried over from last year where you went and won 6 games and nearly beat all Alabama and Georgia with what you had. There's no pressure on those guys this year. You've reloaded in that room. Those guys are like not even – I mean, they're going to play. They're going to be in the game. They're going to make plays at some point. But they're not being relied on. Moving on. You fixed that problem. So what if a guy like Caleb Burton or Camden Brown emerges to go along with what we already know about the top half of this receiver room?
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about, really good, right?
If you have a fourth guy that moves forward, Cole, and catches for, say, over 400 yards, then you know that this offense, that Peyton Thorne has probably thrown for 3+, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And double-digit touchdowns.
I'd be shocked. That'd shock me. If Auburn's fourth best receiver has 400+ yards, I'd be blown.
That would be. That would be a. So, they talked about flipping the script or whatever on recruiting. I think they have. That would be a flip the script on the field.
No doubt. That is a definable, tangible proof of concept moment, right? If your fourth receiver has 400+ yards, and this is not, notwithstanding what you're going to get out of Rivaldo, who's technically considered a tight end.
Yeah.
And he's going to produce.
Right.
That would mean that you are dialing up and putting up points on a lot of different teams. And so Peyton has probably had a fantastic year. And I think probably the biggest thing for Peyton is the changing the completion percentage numbers, because he's been at around 60%. Can he get it up to 65+? Now, he's got bigger receivers on the outside than he had even at Michigan State. You're talking about guys, with the exception of Keon Coleman, right?
Yeah.
Speedy Naylor, Jalen Reed, guys that are 6 foot, maybe even less than that were his weapons. So you've got bigger weapons on the outside, and that typically helps you with that catch radius, being able to, in contested catches, to be able to come away with it by comparison to the defensive back. So I don't know, man. If those are the stats that we're putting up, and your fourth wide receiver has 400 yards, your completion percentage is up, your overall yardage is up, and Auburn has probably won more games than anybody would have ever anticipated.
Yeah. I don't see a world where your fourth receiver is over 300 or 400 yards and Auburn's not winning. Those
no.
Go together.
Yeah. Unless your defense is just like all world bad, right?
Yes, there's a chance, but I don't really see that either.
No.
Yeah, I think the receiver position is going to be Is it Malcolm Simmons, Bryce Kane? I feel like those are two guys that I feel like we're going to have to get into the season with them a little bit. I mean, I don't expect them within a week or two of fall camp, like, oh, all of a sudden. I don't think that quickly, but I would think every week that goes on, they're going to be closer to being a bigger part of what's going on, unless Robert Lewis is so fantastic and everybody just sort of locks it down. But I feel like every week that goes on, maybe they get a little bit more into the playbook, a few more snaps.
I agree with that, but I'll add this, and I've been while up at the complex, I have talked to someone there who, there's not talk about it, but there's an idea at least that Malcolm Simmons could be a guy that could help you on defense if you got to that point and needed more depth on that side. He's the kind of athlete that can help you, and I was just questioning that a little bit with this person I talked to, and they said, yeah, he probably would help out on defense, but he's going to play day one on offense.
I was going to say, I saw your report on that, and that opened my eyes, Cole. And
it was interesting to hear. I mean, they were like, yeah, we'd love to have him on defense, but he's going to play day one on at receiver. So I thought that was interesting.
Very. And to back that point up, when you go back and you watch highlights of him, lowlights of him, there is not a player that was more athletic in the state of Alabama last year, period.
I agree.
I mean, he is a phenomenal athlete. And if his football IQ gets to the point on offense where he understands the nuances of playing receiver and feels comfortable in that offense, the sky's the limit for him, man. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
You mentioned defense. I got to be honest with you. I am probably most concerned about the interior defensive line as much as anything on the team.
Me too.
More than Peyton Thorne, more than the receivers. I know that, they brought some guys in, whether it's Troy Carter or Gage Keys, and, they look like obviously they're going to play and help, and I'm sure they're good players. I don't know. I haven't seen them. I haven't seen them in the SEC. I don't. The SEC in the trenches is a different deal. Jason Jones, to me, continues to look the part, but be very average to me. I'm waiting on him to match for the production and what I'm waiting to match like what he is physically and what he's capable of being. I haven't seen, like, you look at him and you're like, you dominate, right? Look at you. You dominate, right? Well, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I mean, it's like that interior defensive line to me is just a massive question mark. If they're all pretty good, then that would be good. I think Auburn will be in good shape if they're all pretty good. But if you don't have a stud and they're not all pretty good and somebody's just kind of okay and maybe one guy doesn't quite pan out like you thought, then I think you got some concern. And if there's some issues there in the interior and you can't stop the run and you can't penetrate, and it's all the pressure is just on Jalen McLeod on the outside or Austin Keys or somebody to get pressure, and the guys in the middle are just taking up space. I don't know what that deep, because you got a bunch of inexperienced guys in the secondary too. Sort of that group's got to mesh too. But the interior defensive line to me is the biggest question mark on the team. I don't know that I'm sold on any of them. I don't know what any of them are really capable of being.
I totally agree. That's one position that we talked about so much when they were going through the transfer portal that they had to get help, and they did. They did what they needed to do as far as that goes. But what they did was bring the defensive line from this is the average of the SEC. They brought it up here to the average, right? I think some of the guys they got are going to be able to help, going to be able to make some plays. I like Isaiah Rakes. I think he's a good nose guard. Probably won't hear from him much, kind of like Connor Lew that we talked about. You don't need to hear from him much. Just if you're doing your job, you'll hold it up in the middle. And I think Isaiah Rakes is more equipped to do that than what Auburn's had at nose guard in the past couple of years. However, I worry about the other spot, which is your 3 technique, Allen, your 4 whatever. Philip Bleedy. I think he's pretty good. He doesn't, nothing about him really flashes to me too much.
Right.
And your 3 technique, the difference between that and your nose guard's not flashy. They're doing the dirty work and they are taking up the doubles. Your 3 technique, you put him there for a reason because he doesn't get doubled. He's supposed to be able to get off blocks and make plays. I wonder, because your edges are so strong, because we've seen this surgence, I guess you could call it, from Keldrick Falk, physicality, because I think that was a question mark with him. That was really the only thing. Athletic ability wasn't it. Size wasn't it. How physical can he be? I think he's starting to show that. Could he move down to 3-4 play some of that and help you out in that regard? That way you've got Jalen McLeod, Q-Ron Crawford. It's kind of like moving Dylan Wade into guard. I think it makes it better as a unit. I question if Keldrick can do that. So I don't know. I don't have an answer on that. I think he's probably the best at 5, and you don't want to mess with that too much.
Not this year, right? I think another year of strength in a strength and conditioning program, and then you'll probably start to play with him a little bit on the inside some, and maybe you'll do it in special packages this year, like a rabbits package or something of that nature, where you've got a true like speed rush unit in there because it's third and forever, and you're just trying to get as much speed on the field as you possibly can. And maybe you'll see what he does in those kind of a situation. But I actually am okay when I've gone back and looked to see, what Gage Keys is going to bring to the table and what Philip Bleedy is going to bring to the table. And I think Philip Bleedy was a little miscast last year at Indiana. He played more nose than he did 3-tech, and I thought that was an unnatural spot for him. So he was being asked to do some things that were a little bit out of his skill set. So I'm going to be interested to see what DJ Durkin can get out of him, because DJ's an aggressive guy, right? I mean, I think that is his mindset. He wants to take the fight to you. Now, that doesn't make him dissimilar to any other defensive coordinator I've ever heard. I mean, most DCs would tell you their ice cream is aggressive if they could get away with it, right? That's just, that's just who they are as people. But playing that under front, that four down under front that kind of shape shifts and looks like a 3-man line with a stand-up outside linebacker, he's going to play a mix of match coverage on the back end, whether you're in match man or match zone. And he's going to change some things post-snap, right? That's probably the beauty of what he does and creates confusion, is changing the pre-snap look to the post-snap look and how they rotate safeties and bringing delayed blitzes from like a zone pressure look or something of that nature. I think that's where DJ is going to be kind of in his bag some. But if we're talking about what we're kind of worried about, it is the youth in the secondary for me. Yeah. I'm okay with the defensive line, the youth in the secondary. I don't know how the young kids are going to respond. That to me is going to be the interesting piece. You've added some vets, and specifically you got Jaron Thompson from Texas. You had a late pickup of, is it Jaquez Robinson? Is that how you say the young man's name, from Colorado, who played for Charles Kelly at Alabama. So, there's some familiarity on the back end. And for those that don't know, DJ Durkin is from the Will Muschamp tree, who falls from the Nick Saban tree, and a lot of what they do in the back end is very similar there. So the terminology should be close to the same, and concepts should be similar. So it shouldn't take him much to kind of pick up what they're trying to do. But you've got some real youth there at your third corner spot, and that's probably the one to me that's the most unassuredness is, and probably your third safety as well. What do you get out of Caleb Wooden? What do you get out of Sylvester Smith? I think you kind of know what you're going to get out of Jaron Thompson after watching him for 3 years at Texas. But those two guys, do you get anything out of T. Love? We haven't even really talked about the JUCO kid all that much, right? And I thought he had an opportunity to be a day one type guy.
Yeah.
And you really haven't heard much about Laquan Robinson at all. Now, maybe part of that was him acquiescing to the speed of the game coming from JUCO in spring, and maybe he'll have a much better fall. But I was hoping to poke around and hear some rumors about how he was performing in the veterans practice or the captain's practices this summer, and I just haven't heard much. So maybe when we get into that first day of fall camp and you guys are doing your initial interviews and Freeze is kind of pointing guys out, you'll hear a little bit more there. But that's going to be interesting to me. It is the secondary. I feel good about the linebackers. I feel okay about the defensive line, but how does that youth in the secondary play, especially in a very dynamic, you're going to face some dynamic wide receiver corps in the SEC this year. You really are. And so you're going to be tested.
And I'm kind of with you on the secondary. I guess I went defensive line because I just think it's more important.
Sure.
In the interior. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the secondary is all kinds of unknowns. Even Keontae was fantastic in the nickel. We loved him. He moves out in the boundary, whatever. Maryland, I get it, but he didn't look great against Maryland and on the outside. I mean, he got run by a couple times. I don't know. I mean, if they want to keep him there, then I trust them that they got the right plan. But I don't know what he looks like as an outside corner. I know what he looks like in the nickel. But yeah, there's all kinds of unknown in that secondary. A lot of athletes, but not a lot of proven commodities. And linebacker, yeah, you're good at starter, but boy, you better hope Eugene Asante or Austin Keys stays healthy every snap. Because if you lose one of those guys for a game, 2 games, 3 games, who are you plugging in? I think you're in big trouble. If either one of those guys goes down and you're playing legit teams without one of those guys, now maybe later in the year, maybe if Gote comes along, we'll see what he's all about.
Sure.
But again, but for now, until I see something, if one of those guys goes down, I think you're in trouble too.
Surprisingly, I'm feeling a little bit better about linebacker right now.
I agree.
I love the Gote pickup. I'm a fan of that. I thought it was very smart.
Fanaje, that's what I'm going with.
Yeah.
I said that to Hugh in Dallas. I asked him what do you think about Fanaje Gote? He's like, you said it better than I do. I don't even know how to say the name.
Hugh sounds like me on a podcast all of a sudden.
Yeah, right. No, but that's a really good pickup. It really is. I like the way he plays. He's a veteran. He's got a lot of football IQ. I don't think he's going to run anybody down and make these crazy plays, but he's smart in the box. And if you do have to run him in there, if you have an injury to Eugene Asante or Austin Keys, I think he'll be okay. And then I saw some good things from Dorian Mausi. I didn't know he was that fast. He looked faster to me in spring practice than I was expecting. I don't love his film from Duke.
Sure.
I don't. I really don't love his film from Duke. I think he lacked physicality at times. But I think he can help you after seeing him in spring practice. If he's your number one, I do start feeling a little bit more nervous, I think. But I feel better about that unit. And I think DeMarcus Riddick's going to step up too.
I agree. And the thing with Mausi is now he's being asked to be the number 3 guy, right? Whereas at Duke, he was asked to be the number 1.
True.
And so I think with Mausi, you're looking at it, if you're upgrading the floor, probably your third linebacker last year was Anthony Steiner. Probably Wesley Steiner was your third guy last year. Maybe Cam Riley.
It's probably Cam Riley.
Right? I think Dorian Mausi is an upgrade from both of those players.
Oh, no, it's Larry Nixon.
I was about to say Larry Nixon.
Yeah.
I just forgot about him.
And I think he's an upgrade from Nixon. Even though Nixon was productive, you named it, Cole, play speed. He reacted quickly, but just sideline to sideline, he wasn't able to make some of the plays he needed to make in the SEC.
Larry Nixon was Pro Football Focus, by the way. He was dead last on Auburn's defense last year, according to Pro Football Focus. In terms of overall defensive grades, I just looked it up, he was dead last.
Right. So by comparison, I think with Gote and Dorian Mausi, you have upgraded those 2 backup spots. And so to your point, Justin, I think if you have an injury, you're better off this year than you were last. Now, does that mean you're in a great spot? Probably not. But I do think that you have some guys that are serviceable that you can plug in to where if you need to get by for a game or 2, you have the opportunity to do that.
So are there more question marks on defense than offense?
Does this feel like deja vu right now? Did we not do the same thing last year, but the other way around? We were talking about offense being, or maybe it was defense we were talking about having the question marks.
It was. Defensively, we were having question marks, and then Ron Roberts went out and put out a very confident product on the field.
A good product. I wouldn't take anything away from him. Auburn's defense played out of its mind in times when I thought this defense is maxed out. They're not going to be able to do any better than they just played. And then they'd come out and play really well. It's like, that surprised me. So a lot of people, like to criticize Ron Roberts because of certain calls, but listen, that's what it's about. You got to make decisions. You got a very small margin of error, and those calls are what everybody remembers. But you better remember the games they put together, because I didn't think they were capable to do that sometimes, and they did it.
Now, with the depth issues they had, Cole, you're right. And the personnel that he had. I mean, here's the difference is that the three of us are a little bit more educated on what they actually had on the roster by comparison to maybe some of the common fan, right? And I'm not trying to talk down to the common fan. It's just when you understand kind of some of what your limitations are and then what he was able to do with in-game playing calls and putting a structure around the defense and a kind of a game plan week to week, I thought he did a better job than he probably gets credit for. Now, I think DJ Durkin is going to pick up where that left off. I was really impressed with what he did in year 2 at Texas A&M and what he's probably done throughout his – not probably, what he has done throughout his career specifically. If you watch the Michigan defense the year he was the DC there, whew, buddy, they were absolutely nasty. So I'm praising Ron Roberts here, but I think there's going to be a continuation of that with DJ. I'm just a little more unsure of some of the pieces that he's got because of the youth, right?
So question to both of y'all. Take last year's starting defense. Don't even give me the depth of it, but just the starters, and put the starters up against the expected starters for this defense. Which defense do you like better? Which defense is more complete?
Last year
on all 3 levels. I was just thinking that because the secondary was so much more.
You had Marcus Harris, and then you had Jalen, and you had Nehemiah, and you had DJ James. So depth, I think, is better this year. Front line, surefire, like count on kind of semi-studs. I don't know if you have as many of those. Depth, I think, is better. But then if you're looking at going, I got this Marcus Harris, I know that dude's going to produce. Nehemiah Pritchett, I don't know that you have as many. Not that those guys were all Americans, but they're pretty good, like good SEC players. DJ, Nehemiah, Jalen look really good.
Yeah,
I don't know quite if you've got the starters that you would look across and go. I don't know how many of those guys you got outside of Eugene. Keys, I think, can be. If you see, he's sort of forgotten too. He missed a ton of time last year in the middle of the year. That really kind of derailed his whole season. He could be. There's no telling what he could look like this year. But you got Eugene, you got Jalen McLeod. Keontae's got the potential if he, so you got a few there, but I like the starters last year, the depth this year.
I think that is, go ahead, Cole.
No, I agree. That's all I'm saying.
Spot on.
And Crawford, by the way, that's another guy that we didn't hear a ton. Like, I want to know what he does this fall, dude. That guy's
who'd you say?
Crawford, dude. That guy looks. I mean, if you're going to build a player, you're building him.
I know, right? I thought the same thing seeing him walking through the complex. But we're talking about fall camp here. That's one of the guys that, would he change the defense if he? What was that?
No, sorry, I went Allen Iverson. We talking about practice?
Practice. No, really though, I'm Kieron Crawford could change his defense. I really think that because of what I said about Keldrick Falk. If he's able to come on and you can bring Keldrick Falk down every once in a while, I don't think he needs to be there long term at all. But then you've got better options on your interior. Now we focus on the secondary and go, all right, that's the weakness. How do we get that right? And Jacquez Robinson could be an interesting addition too. I don't know anything about him. I'll just be honest. I didn't have enough to even write a commitment breakdown. Sorry. I don't know. I can't find enough on him to tell you if he's a good football player or not. That's where I'm at on that.
He's a veteran that knows the scheme, and that's about as far as you can take it, right? He's a proven commodity to Charles Kelly. Yeah. Charles Kelly knows him. And so you probably have some reassuredness there. But beyond that, I mean, in-game film, he was banged up all last year at Colorado. Had one really good interception where he made a play on the ball against Oregon and Bo Nix.
Oh, yeah.
But other than that, I mean, he's just not a lot there. So it's going to be interesting because he's one of those guys at nickel that if he hits, maybe that kind of changes what you think the defense can be. And back to your point, before we have to wrap this up, is the depth is much better. You're going to have to attack through numbers and rotation, right? At every position, you're going to have to attack through depth and rotation because I think last year's team, especially up front after they lost Masai Nasila-Kite, that was a bigger loss than a lot of people want to give credit to, right?
Huge.
but losing him kind of changed a lot of what they were able to do up front. You are much deeper, but you're right. Not having that Marcus Harris there that I mean, 7 sacks, and I think, did he have, 30-plus tackles, 40-plus tackles? I mean, Marcus was just a one-man wrecking crew last year.
He had a better season than I even realized going back and looking at it.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. Star power, not necessarily where we think it was last year, but depth rotation definitely there. So you're going to have to average a lot of guys playing about 25 snaps, right? You're going to try to maximize and get the absolute best out of what you can get from them. Give me the best 25 snaps you can give me, and it's the next guy up.
Which,
well, listen, yeah, go ahead, Cole.
That's how it should be, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want Jason Jones playing 50 snaps.
No.
Okay. It's not a knock against Jason Jones. A big guy like that, the rest of the D-line too, you don't want him playing that many snaps. You remember the year, I think I brought this up 100 times, Daquan Newkirk and Tyrone Truesdale were the two guys, and they were playing close to 70 snaps a game. That cannot work in this league. That is a great way to get beat.
No, they're going to need all these guys they brought in to be the real deal. Gage Keys has got to be the real deal. Ricardo's got to be the real deal. Philip Leedy's got to be the real deal. And Isaiah Rakes, every one of those guys has got to live up to the billing. All right, let's end on this. Give me a player. I'll go first. Give me a player on offense and a player on defense that you are intrigued to hear about in the fall, or you think is the most important player in terms of development. Like you're like, this dude has got to ascend in August for this team to potentially reach where they want to reach, or, hey, this is a guy that I think if he does get better, it provides Auburn with some kind of X factor. Give me a player on offense and defense. I'll go first to give you a chance to sort of think about it. For me on offense, I would probably go. It's so super obvious, but it's Cam Coleman,
Right?
Because is he already super talented? Yep. But we all know what his ceiling is. The quicker he gets to his ceiling, which isn't going to happen in year one, but the quicker it happens, there's probably stages to it. The quicker he ascends those stages of being the kind of player he can be, the better Auburn is, and the more mistakes he makes up for. Offensive line or a quarterback, he just makes everything easier the quicker he gets to where he needs to get to. And so I think it's just sort of all eyes on him. Like, does he hit a plateau, or does he just keep skyrocketing in August? Defensively, I would go God, I kind of want to go like Champ Anthony or somebody. Like, I think Kayan Lee's pretty solid. I think Keontae's pretty solid. Maybe like a Sylvester Smith or a Champ Anthony, I think are going to be really important in the secondary. We've heard good things about both those guys. And like maybe that whoever that corner slot guy that takes that next step and joins Keontae and Kayan as being like, I can completely rely on him. I know what he's about. He's an all SEC-ish caliber guy. Maybe that third corner or whoever that might be is who I'm looking for. So like Champ Anthony, I guess Sylvester Smith will play some safety, but he still applies as a guy that's got the ability. I don't know where he'll end up, but that'd be my maybe co-picks on defense as guys that like I want to hear where they're at.
I think those are solid picks. For me, I'll be quick, and then I'm going to turn it over to Cole. For all the reasons we just talked about in the secondary, it's got to be Keontae Scott on defense. If he becomes that outside corner, Cole, and I'm reading your mind here. If he becomes that guy on the outside, Auburn's defense is going to be that much better, and we can absolutely get to that 8-win, 9-win plateau. On offense, for me, it's Jarquez Hunter. If he comes out of the gate hot and plays like he did down the stretch and can be that 1,000-yard back that we were missing last year from start to finish, that's another reason that it gives me confidence in the passing game, because you now are going to 100% be in one-on-ones. If the running game gets going early, you're going to have vertical shots down the field, and then it allows Cam Coleman just to play to his strong suit, which is his natural athleticism and ball skills, and that to me it spells house call. So it's those two for me.
Well, I'm thinking completely outside of the box with your question. Defense, Keontae, you said it all, Alan, on that. You too, Justin, what you said about Keontae, I agree with all that. That's the guy on defense to me. On offense, I'm totally not answering your question the right way.
How
But
dare you?
it's Hugh Freeze and Derek Nix for me
Smart.
because I think they got enough. I truly believe they have enough to be successful now. I didn't believe that last year, by the way. I didn't think they had enough. I think they got enough. I think they got quality depth at every position on offense. I think they got enough at quarterback in Peyton Thorne to make this offense work. They got to be able to handle it. I think that's my biggest. They got to be able to show they can move the offense and put them in the right positions to succeed. That's my number one concern, number one thing. With
The most
offense.
pressure. What are you concerned about? Are you concerned that you don't know how good they are at calling plays? Or are you concerned about how they're going to work together? Or
I go back to last year. Yeah. How are they going to work together? Who's going to have full autonomy? I know Freeze believes he is. I believe that's going to happen. But I hope that they can handle it right because I didn't think it was handled right a year ago.
Mhm.
And I don't think they would. I don't think they would disagree with me. I'm not trying to call anybody out. It was just discombobulated.
well, I think it's fair to say that was just a disaster.
No, but at the same time, even though I do believe that, I also don't think they had enough to work with, and that's what caused a lot of it.
Yeah.
So it goes in sort of a circle like that. But I thought they could have done more with Peyton Thorne. I thought they could have put him in better situations. I truly do. Going back and watching it, and I've gone back and watched several plays, several games, several snaps, and I thought for sure they could have put him in a better situation at times. Now, sometimes it was on him. All right.
Yeah.
So I guess if I were to pick an actual player, it would be Peyton Thorne for me. But I also think that he can be helped so much. I mean, my question is, everybody wants to say, well, Jimmy's and Joe's, not X's and O's, right? For a coach. Well, why can't you say that about a quarterback? When they get better players around them, they get better too. It happens everywhere.
And Peyton we talked about that. Look at the receivers he had at Michigan State. I mean, it's okay to say that. It's okay to be like, hey, I'm better when I can throw to Randy Moss. I promise you, I will be a better quarterback if I got a dude to throw to.
Yes.
It's okay to acknowledge that.
Yeah. Right.
I think Brandon Cox would tell you he was better at quarterback when he had Ben Abamanu and Devin Aroshimadu on the outside and Anthony Mix running the seam, right?
You just butchered those two names. Oh my gosh.
He has a tendency to do that.
You just
yeah, 100%. Let's let Justin say it so that everybody knows what they actually sound like. Go for it, Justin.
Ben Abamanu.
Abamanu, there you go.
Abamanu and Devin Aroshimadu.
Okay. I said Aroshimadu. Oh, yeah. I got it wrong. So forgive, guys, if you listen to the pod, forgive me. I'm awful.
That was a duo of names, though, in the same class.
Yes.
That was quite a duo. Yeah. And you had, yeah. And then by the time by the time 07 rolled around, you had it was the confidence. It was the confidence is what got me.
I should have just said Ben and Devin. I should have left it there, right?
Yeah. And then by the time his career, about 07, you're the best receiver on Auburn's team was a former walk-on, Rod Smith.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
So
it went downhill pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Very much so. So just think about that. How much better was he in that 2005? Yeah, 2005 season by comparison to where he was by the tail end. And it was night and day just of what they were capable of on offense.
Yep.
Oh, man, I can't believe we're here at fall camp. Man, May, June, July just flew by, I feel like. And we're within us doing this podcast, I just got an email since I dropped my phone on the ground. I just got an email for Georgia football credentials. I'm like, come on, guys. It's July 20th. Like, at least get me to August before I got to read an email about applying for credentials for a football game, man. It's too early. I'm not ready. But yeah, they start August 1st. We got the email actually earlier today on the first few days of fall camp. August 1st, they get going. We'll have freeze and some practice on Thursday, practice on Friday, no practice Saturday, Sunday, and then back at it Monday, Tuesday. And so we'll be out there. We got some open practice sessions we'll get to see. So, which doesn't ever tell us anything. It's just a bunch of the same drills over and over again. We're going to go out and hype up like it means something. But we'll be like, this is what we saw on this drill. It means everything. But man, I think we're all excited, man. They get through. They got a chance. They got a chance to build this moment. I'm also curious too. We can end. It's not just more of an open question. Like, I wonder if any of this recruiting momentum helps a week before camp. Are the coaches they more fired up? Do the players that help with recruiting? Do the players there now feel any of that momentum, or does it just completely not matter to them, or does some of that energy roll into the start of camp when you're talking about they're not even done? We know they're going to pick up more commitments. I don't know, probably not, but it can't hurt. Just give a little boost of energy, like heading into literally the first day of camp on Thursday.
I think if anything, it creates pressure, Justin, because now you have to win enough to sustain those recruits within your recruiting class.
Yeah.
I mean, think about where Florida was this time last year and the cautionary tale that Billy Napier is right now,
mm-hmm.
and how that recruiting class kind of fell apart because he wasn't able to win enough. So I think it probably adds pressure, healthy pressure, because it's not negative to need to win, right? I mean, I think every fan that supports Auburn, or Hugh Freeze himself, would expect to go out there and win 7 games this year. But you need to be able to go out and do that.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your number? What's that number for you? We'll end on this. Cole is lost to space over here.
Yeah,
what's your number on, like, they asked me this morning, they go, what's successful season? And I was like, I mean, I think it's probably a combination of things, but to me, Auburn football desperately needs a breakthrough. Like, 7 wins is not it. To me, you got to get to 8. That's the minimum. You've got to break through this year. And I consider 8-4 would be, you're only going to be favored in like 6. Looking at it right now, you're probably favored in 6 and underdog in 6. Maybe even if a couple are just barely underdogs. So
right.
To me, 8-4 means you're beating 1 or 2 teams that Vegas thinks you won't. You're probably, if you're 8-4, you're probably 4-4 in the league at that point. But to me, that's the minimum. You got all this recruiting going. You got a better roster. You've had now 3 straight seasons of just super average football across the country.
Sure.
And the SEC, you got to have a breakthrough this year. And to me, you got to get to 8-4.
So I don't know that you have to get 8-4. To me, 8-5 is probably where you got to get. I think if you go 7-5 in the regular season, you got to get a win against an Oklahoma or an A&M, something you can hang your hat on. And then how do you –
somebody? If you do that, you're losing to somebody you shouldn't lose to.
Maybe. So I would say 4 non-conference games you should win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas, Vandy, you should win.
Yeah, that's your 6. That's your 6. You're expected to win those 6. No doubt.
Right. So then you've got, if you get A&M or Oklahoma, that gets you to 7.
Yeah.
And then you've got Kentucky on the road, Missouri on the road, Georgia on the road, and Alabama on the road.
Yeah.
So that means you probably drop one of A&M or Oklahoma at home if you're 7-5 on that. So to me, depending on how you look, that probably you can sell that moving forward, especially if you win your bowl game. 8-5 floats for me. 8-4 is better. I think the Vegas win total right now is 7.5.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So 7 or 8 probably need to be 8-5 for me for this season to be considered a success. I will take bowl game victory, 8-5, 2-game improvement from last year as a success of being able to push that forward. I think you can sell that. Is it exactly what they want? Absolutely not. 8-4 sits so much better with the fan base. It gives you an opportunity to be 9-4 and really build some momentum for the next year. But I don't think you backslide if you go 7-5 this year and win your bowl game. Like, I think you can carry some positivity moving forward. I think that's where Florida got in trouble, is they go 5-7 in year 2. Yeah. So there was no movement forward. So as long as the product improves, you improve offensively. Defensively, you stay competent where you are. You continue to, recruit at a lights out level. So if you get a top 10 class again, 2 years in a row, you also augment the right pieces in the transfer portal and leverage that correctly. You have an opportunity to create some real buzz going into 2025 and take a major move forward. But I'm with you. I think the preference would be if you're going to, be in that 7-8 range, it's definitely at 8. I think 9-3, you're going to have to get some real bounces, right? Like,
Cool. Yeah, I mean,
because you're going to have to go on the road and probably beat Kentucky to get to 9-3 and win both your home games against A&M and Oklahoma. Going on the road to Mizzou right now. I mean, and here's the beauty of it, Justin. We don't know, what Missouri is really going to be, right? Some of these teams that were projected high, it's like this every year, right? Somebody that is projected to do well will do poorly. And some team that is predicted that it's going to finish towards the back half of the conference, like Missouri last year, is going to skyrocket, and they're going to finish with double-digit wins. It happens every single year. Could Auburn be that team? Possibly. I wouldn't bet on it, though, right now, and I think probably 8-4 is what you're looking at. I think I've talked myself into 8-4 being how the schedule is going to go, with 7-5 being the floor, 9-3 probably the ceiling.
Yeah. I think the very bottom floor is 6-6, just because I think there's 6 games that you should win. I think that's the very bottom floor, but it doesn't. But that wouldn't be good enough. Like that, the floor needs to be 7, and I think 8 is probably where a lot of people will land. And like you said, a lot of it's going to depend on how. I think going 4-4 in the league would be nice. If you go 8-4, you're probably 4-4 in the league. That's nice. If you go 7-5. Let's say they go 7-5 and win their bowl game and go 8-5, but they still could have gone 3-5 in the league. And so you're also looking at it going, okay, another 3-5 in the SEC. Like you're still a long way from winning a SEC championship when you're 3-5. So I think there's levels to like. I think 4-4 in the league is important. I think how you play in these games. If you turn around after playing Georgia and Alabama so close, and I know that they're on the road, you turn around this year and go get boat raced by both those teams, then you're like, well, okay, crap. Like, okay, so we went 8-4, but then we just played these teams close, and then we go to their place and we get destroyed. So did we get better? Like, maybe marginally. That's why I think beating Oklahoma is so big. They don't have a ranked win since 21. That's a marker.
Yeah.
Beat a ranked team. Like to me, that's a marker. 4-4 in the league. That's a marker. So I think there's different ways people can judge success. Maybe it's some kind of combination. And you're right, the bowl game, I don't know. I mean, people just bowl games might depend on who it is. If you beat some bowl wins, you're like, okay. Some might be like if Auburn would have beat Maryland, would that have been nice? Yeah. Would it have signaled Auburn was back?
No, but I don't think you would have probably had some of the contentious conversations that were had after that bowl game, right?
Well, especially how that happened. My gosh.
Yes.
Depressing. That game was depressing.
Right. And it probably gives you the faith that Hugh Freeze has a team bought in to go into a bowl game, which you and I both know right now, getting guys motivated to play in bowl games is extremely difficult because you have those that are preparing to go pro, those that are preparing to enter the portal, and those that are –
your depth better be out of this world.
Right. You know what I mean? It is just extremely hard to get a team to be up for a bowl game right now. So that means you've probably got a team that's bought into your culture and that you're pushing that part of it forward. So that's probably the part to me that gives you a little bit of confidence is that Hugh Freeze has control of this. And again, it's a 2-game improvement. And I think anytime you can make a 2-game jump from one season to the next, that's tangible proof that things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting, man. Golly, Oklahoma 2 months away, and it'll be Auburn and Oklahoma, and just what I think is shaping up to be a big game. Big game for both teams in that one. I can't wait for that one. All right, we'll hop into fall camp. We'll let fall camp get rolling, and then we'll probably start back the Auburn Live show here maybe in a couple weeks, and we'll be rolling throughout the season. So appreciate everybody joining us. I think Cole hit the road. So I hope he drives safe. I don't know where he's going. Who knows? Maybe he's going to get another commitment. He's going to grab another one. I wouldn't doubt it.
And Quan Fegans is tonight. I think that's where he's going to be. So we'll see.
Oh, look at him. There he goes. Well, he's not going there for nothing.
Nope.
All right. Appreciate Alan. Appreciate Cole. Shout out to Session Cocktail, sponsor of the show. And we'll get out of here. We'll see you guys next time. Go to auburnlive.com, subscribe, $1, 1 month. Hey, go to the YouTube channel also and join for $3. If you don't want to join the site, whatever, that's not a good decision. But if you don't want to join the site, join for $3 on YouTube, and you can get a bunch of premium YouTube content. That's better than nothing. But you get that for free if you're a member of the site. So come join auburnlive.com. We'll see you guys next time.